right, everybody. Well, welcome to another show of Red Grace Live. It's good to be with you, Emilio Ramos, along with Michael Whitehead, as always. It's good to be back on the program where we can discuss issues relating to apologetics, theology, the Christian worldview, and as of late, we have been doing quite a bit of apologetics, specifically talking about the issue of transhumanism, artificial intelligence, and what I call the futurist dream. And of course, in our last episode, we introduced a documentary that Living Waters did, ministry of Ray Comfort and the crew over there. Really good friends of mine, all dear brothers that I love. And they did a great job of putting together this kind of short 17-minute video on some of the statements and the worldview implications of Yuval Noah Harari, which, of course, Yuval Noah Harari is a well-known globalist, transhumanist, futurist enthusiast, and really ultimately, Yuval Noah Harari is a historian, but he's also an advisor to the globalist entity known as the World Economic Forum, which is led by Klaus Schwab. And of course, the World Economic Forum has been long now documented for some of its sort of socialistic, communistic, technocratic sort of worldview that it envisions for mankind. Everything from having no more property that you own and being happy to living in a 15-minute city where you're not allowed out of that city without special permission. And maybe the most famous quote from the World Economic Forum is that you will eat bugs for a living. And although
we discussed that last time. Yeah, we discussed that last time. We're not going to. Sally in the field is doing what she's supposed to be doing, and eventually she will end up on my plate as a T-bone, ribeye, New York strip.
Yeah.
No bugs.
Be careful, because my understanding is that even right now in American stores, there already have things like cricket flour and things like that. So you are eating the bugs, Micah. I don't know if you know, but probably some of the fries you're eating and stuff has some kind of bug ingredient. And we all know how much you love junk food. So who knows what's in your body at this point?
It's actually mostly just coffee.
mRNA, spike protein, bug protein.
The bugs only come through the ground coffee. It just happens. It's nature. It's just what happens.
Well, today we want to try to finish up this video, or get as far along in this video as we can. I honestly think, Micah, we're doomed. I don't think we're going to finish this video today, because there's so much.
Right.
I've seen the video a few times now. There's so much material here to talk about, the implications of which are important. But we'll get to the video as soon as I have the first word, because there's some really important things that I want to talk about. So give me the first word, and then we'll start. At this point, it's all about awareness. It's about awareness because so much of the church is still unaware. Matter of fact, I've pointed this out before. If you go to Amazon or some Christian bookstore and you're looking for books on transhumanism, or what they call technological singularity, a term that was popularized by Ray Kurzweil, when you look into this stuff, AI, ChatGPT, transhumanism, all of these kind of things, there's only a couple of books that are reputable. And one of those books is more liberal than I would want to be in your church. But when you're looking at resources and you're doing research and you're looking for a good book, really, there is a book out there by Jacob Schatzer called Transhumanism and the Image of God. And that certainly is a book that is worth reading. I say all that to say what we need right now, or the stage that we are in right now, in light of all of this, is awareness, raising awareness, building awareness. There's a massive education curve that is going to take a while for us to overcome, where the typical evangelical Christian, let alone in a lot of Reformed churches even, there's just not a lot of guys that are doing serious work in apologetics dealing with things like transhumanism and AI. There are people that are talking about it, but I think the leaders that I've spoken to over the last several years are kind of at a loss and don't really know what to do about it or what to say about it. They see that there are problems on the horizon, but they don't really know what the response should be at this point. Formulating that worldview, therefore, becomes imperative, and especially for me, from a distinctly Christian perspective, from a distinctly Reformed perspective, what are the sort of the key factors that we need to interact with when we're formulating some sort of worldview response? And I think some of those key doctrines are going to be the image of God, which is basically anthropology, but it's also going to be things like eschatology and understanding a concept like teleology. In other words, the idea of man's ultimate purpose and the ultimate goal for which we exist, which, of course, as the Westminster Confession tells us, the chief end of man is to glorify God and to enjoy him forever. Whereas in the transhumanist worldview, the chief end of man is to progress until we reach a post-human future altogether. So really, in the transhumanist worldview, the chief end of man is not to exist or to be surpassed by your own technology, your own ideas, or what one transhumanist, Hans Marvich, would say, the children of our own mind, which is super intelligent robots that leave us in the dustbin of history. Now, if that's not alarming enough, we understand that technology is a huge subject. We understand that technology, the Greek word technology comes from techne, just means art or craft or tool. And technology is, in fact, a tool that we can say is actually neutral. What you do with a hammer, for example, a hammer is itself a tool, a form of techne, a form of technology. It gives man abilities that in and of himself he doesn't have, because with your hand, you can't possibly drive a nail into a piece of plywood. However, with technology, you're able to leverage your abilities and you are able to overcome certain obstacles. But whether you wield that hammer to build a house or wield that hammer to kill somebody is entirely up to the user. And so technology, though it is a neutral thing in itself, is not neutral the minute it is in the hands of a user, of an operator. But here's the thing. All technology is in the hands of users and operators. And we are dealing with a kind of super technology today by way of artificial intelligence and supercomputing, the idea of intelligence in general. And all of that intelligence and all of that technology is in the hands of certain users and operators that have a given worldview. Now, we're going to continue to walk through this video with Yuval Noah Harari. We will pick up kind of where we left off, but remember, what we're dealing with here and why I wanted to start off this way is to say this is fundamentally, indisputably, undeniably a clash of worldviews of what we can think about when technology and the Bible collide. And so with that, Micah, let's get back into this video. Micah, based on what we already saw last week with Yuval Noah Harari, how much did Yuval convince you of transhumanism?
I'm sold out.
Are you a committed transhumanist now?
Absolutely sold out. There's no going back either.
Let me look at the back of your head to make sure you don't have a chip anywhere back there.
Oh, well, you don't even have to look. You don't even have to look. I can just confirm that it is there.
You have become Data from Star Trek.
Yeah, I mean, look, you can see it. It's, there's the cable.
I see the wire.
There.
Oh no.
Yeah, there it is.
Oh no, man, you are a cyborg indeed.
Yeah, and even going back to the comment that you made last week, which was about the hive mind and this mentality, it boggles my mind. Just this idea that we all have to, and you just said it a few minutes ago, this 15-minute zone kind of thing. If I remember correctly, there was a UN plan a couple years back that was the 2021 agenda or 21 agenda or something like that, that kind of had that same kind of mindset in place. And they were trying to push this years ago, this globalist kind of agenda, and all to just control people is how I view it. But it's frightening. And the question is, how many believers are getting sucked into this?
Well, it's a difficult question. It's very complex because, as we introduced last week, there is the concept connected to this whole technology explosion. And the concept is a concept of governance, which is globalism. Mm-hmm. And, I'll never forget, I was at a conference with some friends from Living Waters, good dear friends of mine. And I remember at some point we discussed the G3 conference, and they were some really great speakers and stuff. And I remember telling, I think it was Easy, I said, I'd like to see other topics in the future handled by big conferences like that. And he asked me what those topics were, and I said, well, they're kind of different. Mm-hmm. I love going to a Christian conference like the Shepherd's Conference or G3 or whatever. I've put on a lot of conferences, even in the past in my own ministry, but I think the time has come where we are facing kind of new challenges. We kind of entered a brave new world, and we're really at the cusp now. Kind of the consensus right now in the futurist community is that we really are sort of on the precipice and on the cusp of something really radical taking place in our culture. And by that, we mean that from this year, 2023, to about 2030, or as Ray Kurzweil is famous for predicting, 2029, we are going to see the intrusion of technology into our lives that everything that we see right now will not compare even in the slightest. And I'm convinced that what's going on right now actually is, not just me, but even Yuval Noah Harari, in his books, he documents that what's going on right now is is that humans are being hacked, what he calls human beings becoming hackable animals. In his books, he talks about human beings becoming, in a sense, data mines and data colonies, where we are being sort of mined for our information and our data and fed back into enormous, powerful, super, I'm using the word loosely here, but very intelligent machines that are able then to procure all that data into very powerful algorithms, and that through those algorithms, they will know more about you than you know about yourself by a long shot, and will be able to essentially predict many things about you, and will know kind of what your future holds and what it should hold. It's going to be the ultimate way to profile a person, and not just because of the color of your skin, but really about everything because of the nature of your data. So think about that. Right. We're talking about profiling people on the basis of the nature of your data. If you want to see something like that today, just take a look at China and the social credit score and what's happening there, where right now, millions of people, millions of the citizens of China are being denied certain rights, travel rights, purchasing power, things like that, right. The ability to obtain property, real estate, all on the basis of their data and what that data amounts to by way of a digital score, the digital credit score system. It's terrifying when you think of the implications of this applied worldwide. And Yuval Noah Harari knows this. And this is part of what I've been trying to tell people, is that these people know things that you don't know. These people are assured of certain things. They're convinced of it. And that's why today they are speaking with incredible hubris, even as we're going to see here with Yuval Noah Harari. So in order for time not to get away from us too much here, Micah, let's resume kind of somewhere at least close to where we left off.
Sure.
Where Yuval Noah Harari is talking about the nature of man. He's talking about the nature of our biological reality. He's talking about the kind of body that we have and what Christianity taught as it was influenced by Platonic ideas and all of these ultimately ridiculous ideas that Yuval Noah Harari is advancing. But let's resume kind of where we left off.
If you could change one thing in the world by magic today, what would it be? I would change human understanding of themselves to place more emphasis on our shared biological reality and less on all the kind of fictional stories that we create with our minds. If we could just let go of these stories for a little while, and again go back to the level of the body, we would realize that we are all the same. All of us share the same biology, irrespective of our ideology and religion and whatever. And if we remember that, and let go a little of our ideological and religious fantasies, that's the basis to create a better world for everybody.
And there's the answer for the human dilemma. Get rid of the Bible and its teachings, and you solve the problem.
So the Christian fantasy became to completely disconnect from the body. And this remained a fantasy for thousands of years.
He can't get away from his hatred of the Bible. And there's good
Well,
reason.
before we get to there, Micah, we should stop it there for one reason, because at this point, Ray Comfort is going to begin to talk about Yuval Noah Harari's homosexuality. But listen to what Yuval Noah Harari is trying to do there. He's trying to distill everything down to the level of the physical, of the material. He wants to give you a materialistic worldview. I mean, that's plain and simple. He wants us to see ourselves as nothing more than a collective material oneness. That's it. It's oneism, and ultimately it's humanistic. It's ultimately pagan. And in that sense, you can pretty much do anything you want with humanity. Once humanity loses its sense of transcendence and it's reduced down to the level of biology, how do we have any more meaning or significance than a amoeba? What distinguishes us from the bugs that Klaus Schwab wants us to eat? Nothing. Our worldview completely collapses, completely implodes, and it just shows you, Yuval Noah Harari here and his worldview, that it is not neutral. I mean, man, there's a famous quote by Cornelius Van Til where he tells his students at one point, "Who do you think the philosophers were? I mean, do you think the philosophers are like children in a playground?" Right? These are sinners. These are people with a particular worldview and a set of assumptions, a set of presuppositions that they don't just suspend whenever you talk to them about religion, any more than Yuval Noah Harari is going to suspend his presuppositions of a Darwinian, evolutionary, materialistic, closed system where there is no transcendent influence whatsoever. God is not a factor. Revelation is not possible. And Christianity is a fantasy, even as he said. If Christianity is a fantasy, we need to then begin to press the worldview of Yuval Noah Harari or anybody else and begin to ask them, look, if all of these are just ideological religious fantasies, what distinguishes their fantasies from your fantasies? Is transhumanism a fantasy? In 1,000 years, is transhumanism going to be a fantasy? There are no ways out of these kind of worldview dilemmas. It always comes right back down to the nitty-gritty issue of the exclusivity of truth itself. Truth is exclusive. Truth is exclusive. It's, the law of non-contradiction very clearly states A and non-A cannot be both true at the same time and in the same way. There is a transcendent nature to the laws of logic, to the laws that govern our metaphysical truth. And Yuval Noah Harari doesn't care about that because he has decided for his own worldview that he has fully intact. Before he even approaches the issues of transhumanism, he has a materialistic worldview already developed, and he's already committed to that. That's why, Micah, I'm a committed Van Tilian presuppositionalist. Because if we don't attack things at the worldview level, at the basic level of people's assumptions, we don't get anywhere in the conversation. We can't basically scale the language barrier unless we get down to the transcendent level of people's fundamental worldview assumptions, their starting points. Without that, makes it very, very difficult to interact with somebody when it comes to individual facts, like, is the Bible inspired? Is the Bible reliable? Is the manuscript evidence tenacious? Do we have an infallible, inerrant word of God?
Right.
Those individual artifacts of truth, have to be analyzed by a world view. And Yuval Noah Harari has a world view, and so do us. So do we. Mm-hmm. The only question that remains is, whose worldview makes things intelligible? According to Yuval Noah Harari, the materialistic worldview is a worldview in which we can't know anything beyond the materialistic world. Like, for example, there is no immaterial things. For example, like the laws of logic. So given his worldview, we cannot make sense out of transcendentals. Transcendentals like meaning, morals, beauty. How do you have meaning without transcendental truth, like the laws of logic? It just doesn't work. So as Yuval goes on here and as this video rolls on, we're really going to start kind of seeing more of Yuval Noah Harari's ethics and some of these moral starting points. So let's just keep going.
He can't get away from his hatred of the Bible, and there's good reason for this.
As you mentioned, I met my husband online more than 20 years ago, growing up in a small town in Israel, which was very homophobic society at the time. Just meeting other people, just meeting guys for dating was very difficult.
What's the most important learning of your life?
Meditation, to observe myself. That, again, to observe how my mind constantly creates fictional stories and be able to let go of them for a little while and just be in touch with the reality as it is.
The operating system of
let's stop there, because he made some very, very crucial claims there. I mean, obviously, what Yuval Noah is exposing is that he has a certain ethic, a certain sexuality that runs contrary to the biblical worldview, and he'll do whatever it takes in order to substantiate that worldview. Yeah. And so instead of going outside of himself to, let's say, divine revelation, you heard what he said there. What's ultimate for him is to go inside, to go inward.
Yeah, just meditate, just push it away, push all those fantasies away, and then reflect on how he can justify it for himself.
I mean, isn't that the spirit of the age? Isn't that exactly what we're seeing right now, Micah?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, everything is about you.
It's all over culture. It's all over culture. I mean, and we're being taught this at the youngest of ages.
Absolutely. If you think about, the educational system, the entertainment industry, the political world, the way they try to persuade you, everything is conducive to you. Everything bows down to the altar of self. And that's why a message like this is truly humanistic. I mean, truly humanistic. Where humanism, of course, being that man is the measure of all things. We don't need it. Yuval Noah Harari wants you to believe, in fact, that you don't need anything outside of yourself. I mean, that is true humanism. And this worldview, therefore, I think it will really, really grow on people because, like I said, last time we were talking about this, it's like the perfect storm is gathering, and the seeds were planted a long time ago, and the foundation stones have been laid for the building of this technocratic, pagan, humanistic, false pseudo-spirituality and false worldview, where you are, in a sense, your own God. You dictate whatever you want about reality. You stipulate what morality is. You give your own life meaning, and therefore you create the ethics for your own life, for your own world. And I mean, it's just crazy. And there was a film that was done, and I've mentioned this before during either a podcast or a video that I did in the past. but there was a film that was done, and it was filmed entirely in the virtual world. And in that virtual world, it was I think it was a rated R film. There was no nudity or anything like that, but it did depict what people wanted to be by way of avatars in that world. And of course, to nobody's surprise, these avatars were interspecies. It was hypersexuality at every turn in that meta world, in that virtual world. It was, it was just immorality everywhere. And there you go. When you can kind of create your own world, what is it that man creates? The metaverse, remember, Mark Zuckerberg, even though a lot of people would say the metaverse has failed, I'm not so sure. I'm still holding out on that. I think it will make a comeback, virtual reality, that is, especially with Apple announcing their new goggles and stuff like that.
Well, that's just because you've bought land in the metaverse and you're trying to make sure that you get that rate of return, correct?
Yeah, with my Bitcoins, of course.
Yes, exactly.
but now you got me thinking about, like, opportunities lost and stuff like that. I should have bought real estate in the metaverse. What was I thinking? I shouldn't have been thinking about apologetics. I should have been thinking about economics.
Exactly.
My finances, for crying out loud. No, but what Zuckerberg said at the very, kind of the launch of Meta and the metaverse and everything, he said that the metaverse is going to be the place where you can do whatever you want to do with whoever you want to do, wherever you want to do it, whenever you want to do it. I wrote something on this where I talk about being introduced to the unlimited. And I'm telling you that these technocratic, globalist, futurist, transhumanists have tapped in to the potential of humanity being on the cusp, where they believe themselves introduced through this technology, introduced to the unlimited, which means we decide meaning, morals, beauty, spirituality, sexuality, everything. And it is the complete erasure of the history of man. And it's really quite pagan and just unbelievable. But ironically enough, Mike, if you can bring up the video, but don't play it, but just bring this up because, I mean, look at that. Here he is giving a lecture, and what's he standing in front of there?
Well, he's standing in front of a lectern, but I think you're trying to point out this Tower of Babel style lookalike building that is moving upwards towards the heavens.
Yeah. My wife, she cannot handle any blasphemy at all. She doesn't like anything that takes the Lord's name in vain and has a violent reaction to it. And if you are like that, I'll just warn you right now, this video, Yuval Noah Harari is going to get pretty bad. Not that he's going to curse or anything, but just, again, it's like he just excels and he just, gets a kick out of using biblical language in a blasphemous, distorted way in order to kind of rub it in your face that what they're doing is attempting to, like Psalm 2 says, cast their cords asunder, right? Tear the cords asunder to rage against the Lord and his anointed. But that's how this goes from here on out. So go ahead and play, Yuval.
The operating system of every human culture in history has always been language. In the beginning was the word. We use language to create mythology and laws, to create gods and money, to create art and science, to create friendships and nations. Gods are also not a biological or physical reality. Gods too is something that we humans have created with language by telling legends and writing scriptures. What would it mean for human beings to live in a world where perhaps most of the stories, melodies, images, laws, policies, and tools are shaped by a non-human, alien intelligence? Already today, in games like chess, no human can hope to beat a computer. what if the same thing happens in art, in politics, economics, and even in religion? In future, we might see the first cults and religions in history whose revered texts were written by a non-human intelligence. And of course, religions throughout history claimed that their holy books were written by a non-human intelligence. This was never true before. This could become true very, very quickly, with far-reaching consequences.
The far-reaching consequences would be a new Bible written by artificial intelligence. Let's see if we can guess what that Bible would be like. It would remove the exclusivity of Christ, the offense of salvation by grace alone, any reference to sin, righteousness, and judgment, and of course, especially any condemnation of homosexuality. It would change the revealed nature of God into an idol that has no sense of justice, no moral dictate, and therefore will not punish sinful behavior. I asked AI the following question. If you were going to rewrite the Bible to suit all religions, what would you remove?
Well, here, before he gives that answer, because that's a perfect launching point for our next segment, but if you think about what Yuval Noah Harari basically just did, is he substituted one religion for the next after he belabored the idea that religions are all fantasy. Right. So, of course, when you get the ability to do something remarkable, according to him, when you get the ability to do something intelligent, I wonder what you do with it. Let's see. Yuval Noah Harari says, "Oh, we'll make a religion.
Create a new fantasy."
Man, suddenly he became extremely religious.
Yeah.
I mean, he's practically wearing a Catholic collar. I mean, you might as well just, might as well ordain him now to the Church of AI, because he wants to be the prophet and the pastor of the new church. Listen, what does that show you? But that his hubris is only surpassed by his rank hypocrisy. Because he knows the power of spirituality and the power of religion. And so he understands that man being fundamentally religious by nature, he knows that apart from spirituality, there is no persuading the masses. There is no way. Atheism will never, ever, ever be the predominant worldview in the world. When you look at the demographics of the planet, of the globe, when you take, using even secular sociological measures and metrics, when you take all things Christendom, which of course they would include Catholicism, Mormon, everything, Islam, Buddhism, and Hinduism, it is not a world devoid of spirituality. The only question becomes what spirituality do you have, and what is the nature of your worldview? So Yuval Noah Harari understands that is the nature of man, and I think that's the reason why he has to, at some point, as he forecasts into the future, he needs to offer that, hey, I know that the vast majority of you out there are spiritual. We'll do it better. We'll do it better than they have. He's the new apostle of the AI religion and the Chat GPT Bible.
Oh.
And oh boy.
Yeah.
And so I think Ray Comfort did something really brilliant here by asking Chat GPT, or he said he asked AI, so that I'm assuming it was a Chat GPT question. How to basically create the perfect religion for the future. And these are the answers that came back, which I think are just typical. And what does it do but tell us, probably, Micah, based on these questions or these answers that the AI algorithm gave back, does it sound unbiased to you? Let's go ahead and roll it.
The answer is no.
This is what it said. Remove exclusivist language. Emphasize universal values. Incorporate teachings from other religious texts. Avoid specific doctrinal statements. Acknowledge multiple paths.
The new AI tools would have an immense influence on human opinions and on our worldview. People, for instance, may come to use, are already coming to use, a single AI advisor as a one-stop oracle and as the source for all the information they need. No wonder that Google is terrified, and for a good reason. Why bother searching yourself when you can just ask the oracle to tell you anything you want? You don't need to search. So for thousands of years, we humans basically lived inside the dreams and fantasies of other humans. We have worshipped gods, we pursued ideals of beauty, we dedicated our lives to causes that originated in the imagination of some human poet or prophet or politician.
He just can't stay away from his enmity towards God. It's always there, disguised among a list of other things.
For thousands of years, prophets and poets and politicians have used language and storytelling in order to manipulate and to control people and to reshape society.
I think that fake news has been with...
Let's stop right there. I know this clip on fake news is very popular. It's kind of been circulated around and around. But man, Micah, there's so much to talk about right there. Yeah. If you think about what Yuval Noah Harari just said there, he's talking about how that through artificial intelligence, we're basically going to create such a wonderful new future where we can now liberate ourselves. And that is extremely language kind of rhetoric, but you can liberate yourself from living in the fantasies of others. Because of course, the people developing ChatGPT and AI and all of this stuff, of course, they are completely objective and innocent in everything, right? Mm-hmm. They don't have a worldview that they're trying to offer you or to prefer. If you back it up, I don't know if you can go from this timestamp right here, basically 11:30, and go back to the list of what AI said to Ray Comfort, ChatGPT. But you look at that list, and you can just tell that above everything, it's not so much that the answers that we're given here are telling us that there is no, they don't allow religion, they don't allow spirituality. Everybody has to be an atheist. But as I've said before, this is the way it looks. Mm-hmm. The way it looks is that every religious thing or religious entity or religion is allowed except the one true religion. Mm-hmm. And so what we're looking at, and by the way, guys, I don't know how many like Left Behind kind of movies you saw in your day, let's say in the past. Reformed people, we don't watch stuff like that, we certainly don't go back to the late great Planet Earth and
Thief in the Night
movies.
Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah. We certainly don't go back to those kind of movies, right? But I got to tell you, if you were ever to cast someone as the false prophet, I think Yuval Noah Harari.
He kind of fits the bill.
He would be a perfect person to play that role.
So, just real quick, what I see from this list is kind of just like the doctrines of the Unitarian Church. I mean, they've already done this, and they're already doing this and have done this for the last 50 years, whatever. Because a few weeks ago, as the glorious Pride Month was happening, I was driving by a Unitarian church in my community that had a big, huge Pride celebration going on. Yep. And they're doing everything. They're acknowledging other paths. They're incorporating teachings from other religious texts, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And what is it, brother, but the spirit of this age?
Absolutely.
What is it? Yeah, what is it but an utter antichrist spirit that is just permeating all sectors of society, and that really has the potential here now through globalist thinking and globalist ideas married to this radical technocratic vision of the future. Mm-hmm. Incredible. And what Yuval Noah Harari is saying is like, look, we have what's coming on the horizon is a new oracle, a new prophet. Isn't that remarkable? Isn't it incredible? It should be astounding to us how the man who began his entire presentation and talk, well, as we put together these clips at least, but what he has presented essentially is a religious worldview. Only give him enough rope, give him enough time, only to offer you at the end a new religion, a new worldview with a new text. I mean, so far, Yuval Noah Harari, he's given us a new Bible. I thought he hated Bibles. He's given us a new prophet, a new oracle. I thought he didn't believe in apostles and prophets. You know, he's given us a new spirituality. It's all about you. You go inward, you meditate. Where does spirituality come from if not the spirit? I thought the body was all we had. And so this is the contradictions of a transhumanist. I mean, that sounds like a book that I can write. Contradictions of a transhumanist. But yeah. This is the transhumanist worldview playing out in front of you of Yuval Noah Harari, who in his books, man, and I should have pulled out all his books today, but in his books, he talks about the fact that everything in this world can be identified as a technical issue. Everything, your emotions, your body, society, economics, the economy, right? Spirituality, your brain, everything. And what Yuval Noah Harari says in at least one of his books is that every technological problem has a technological solution. So he turns you into a technical a problem, and then he offers you a technical solution. I mean, it's amazing. And this is why we've got to do deep apologetics in this field, because Micah, I kid you not, I could hand you today, because I've compiled lists of probably 100 or more, maybe 200 videos of guys just like Yuval Noah Harari speaking at either institutions, universities, TED Talks, those kind of things that are saying the exact same things that Yuval Noah Harari is saying. Mm-hmm. Yeah. This is an absolute worldview issue. So let's keep rolling along here and see what else. Matter of fact, you know, this video, Micah, it gets really good because toward the end of it, I really like what Ray Comfort does with it. So maybe we'll get to see how Ray responds and addresses some of these issues himself.
Sure.
I think that fake news have been with us for thousands of years. Just think of the Bible.
Evolution by natural selection with evolution by
right
intelligence.
I'm sorry. We stopped it at a bad spot. This is one of the most famous Yuval Noah Harari quotes. Fake news, just think of the Bible. And these people in this audience, like zombies, just sit there. There's not a single person. I tell you what, man, if you think, if you have any doubt whatsoever of the people who sit in positions of power and influence and prominence in this world and where they truly stand on the issue of biblical Christianity, look no further than the many, many speaking engagements that Yuval Noah Harari does, usually before an audience of hundreds, if not thousands of people, with zero protest to the blasphemous things that he says, like that. It's right. It's just astounding. Just astounding. Keep going.
Design, not the intelligent design of some God above the clouds, but our intelligent design.
More people were killed and persecuted in the name of the religion of love, Christianity, than in the name of any other idea in human history.
That's just not true. The Encyclopedia of Wars states that there have been over 1,700 wars in human history, with only 7% classified as religious wars. and most of that 7% were Islamic wars. Why would he say something that just isn't true?
The religion of love turned out to
Not
be
only that, let's stop it there, because Ray Comfort did not add what I would have probably added, and that's just simply this, that in the name of communism, atheistic fascism, whether you take Stalin, Mao Zedong, Hitler, and other rulers like Pol Pot, you're talking about the slaughter of millions upon millions of people, all in the name of anti-religion. And then of course, as this is even more comprehensive here. I'm going to say something. Yes, the persecution, martyrdom, and the wars that have come at the hands of Islam over the years, even the Crusades, but also even at the hands of false religions like Catholicism, and the millions of people Catholicism put to death after the Reformation for attempting to simply read the Bible for themselves and break away from the Catholic Church. Anyway, I just got to throw that out there, because the Reformed tradition, we are very, very self-aware of the horrors of the Roman Catholic Church as it wreaked havoc in the slaughter of untold thousands of French and European Christians and pastors. So anyway, I could just go on forever about that. But there you have it. And he's trying to poison the well so that you can adopt a more secular worldview, of course.
Right.
Of course.
Religion of love turned out to be the most intolerant religion in human history.
You talk about in 21 Lessons this notion that God is dead. And is there a place for that notion of God or religion to capture and secure like this notion of meaning in life or purpose in life?
One God is the cosmic mystery. We don't understand why there is something rather than nothing, why the Big Bang happened, what is human consciousness. There are many things we don't understand about the world, and some people choose to call these mysteries by the name of God. That's one kind of God. I have no problem at all with this God. I like it very much.
Here now is the basis for his atheism. It's rooted in idolatry. God to him is nothing more than a mystery, and that nebulous mystery doesn't hold him morally accountable for his sin, and no sinner has a problem with such a non-existent God. But he's offended by the biblical revelation of God, blasphemously calling him a petty lawgiver.
Then there is another God, which is the petty lawgiver. The chief characteristic of this God, we know a lot of extremely concrete things about that God. We know what he thinks about sexuality. And then, like a magician, swapping one card for another, they will take out the mystery God and place the petty lawgiver, and you end up with something strange like, because we don't understand the Big Bang, women must dress with long sleeves and men shouldn't have sex together.
Unbelievable. There you have Yuval Noah Harari giving a completely deconstructed and reconstructed version of biblical revelation, biblical Christianity, the history of redemption, and it would take us all day, Micah, to sit here and try to correct the many historical fallacies and errors and the hyperboles, the exaggerations and the mischaracterizations of biblical theology, biblical revelation that Yuval Noah Harari engages in. And of course, because he's liberal, he's gay, and he is a globalist transhumanist, he gets a free pass. And he has no problem speaking all of this with blind hubris, and people give him a platform.
Well, one thing that I'm noticing in all these clips is that the multiple different speaking engagements that he's done, it's all been to, I would say, friendly crowds. Is he this way just in everything, or has he just doesn't go to unfriendly crowds?
He actually does do some dialogues where they debate certain issues, but they typically he does He does debates where they envision different scenarios about the future. Now, what's interesting about Yuval Noah Harari, and I will mention this, at least to be fair to him, is that in his books, he is at least raising alarm. And he's actually, in many instances, he's actually called powerful people out on the carpet. For example, he had a dialogue with a Google engineer, and this was a high-level Google representative. And he actually said, hey, look, the work that you're doing could result in massively oppressive, totalitarian kind of overreach with the kind of technology that something like China and the social credit score. And what are you guys doing to fix that? So he does apply pressure to the other side, but at the end of the day, he never will enter into a dialogue with a representative, let's say, of biblical Christianity. I've not seen that. So he's definitely in a place where he's always comfortable. He's always appreciated, applauded, and
never going to get
he's
pushback.
Always never going to get real pushback on the totality of his ideas. If there is video of him doing that, I haven't seen it. I know he does lectures where he does receive at times questions from audience members and stuff like that.
I'm writing down a note right now. Reach out for debate with Emilio.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, that'd be cool, right? Yeah, that'd be a doozy. So, yeah, let's keep going here.
Mingling biblical instructions for female modesty with a law that forbids homosexuality may get a giggle from Google, but he will still have to face that law on Judgment Day. What's AI?
AI stands for artificial intelligence.
Are you afraid of it?
I wouldn't say I'm afraid of it, but portrayed in media, there's a sense that AI sometime in the future will take over and basically develop some kind of sentient mind and run the world.
Is that scary?
It's scary, but I think we can prevent it.
How do we prevent it?
Double down, regulate it, because it seems to be, it's especially mainstream nowadays, because all over TikTok, Instagram, you see like people advertising AI up and about.
Are you afraid of the future?
No.
Have you ever heard of the Antichrist?
Yeah. In the Bible, it says he's going to come first, and people will be deceived to thinking that Christ, the Savior, has actually come to, save us. But in the Bible, it says, no, he's going to come down on a white horse from the clouds. That's what the Bible actually says.
So are you a Christian?
Yes, I am.
So is that why you're not afraid of the future?
Yeah, because I believe we have to be prepared for everything that has to come. And I believe that we have already been given our guidelines in the Bible, especially, of preparing for the end times and not being deceived, especially by the Antichrist.
Now, let me just say this, because he ends it here by a series of scripture references. Now, this is one of the reasons why I wanted to cover this video, Micah, is because, and I want you to keep the verses up. If you can, keep the video up as we'll scan through these verses here for a second. But the fact that he talked to this young guy, and he turned out to claim to be a believer, but I pray he is, but I almost wish he was an unbeliever, just to illustrate this point right here. And that is that the way I started our show today is talking about, again, the golden opportunity for gospel proclamation right now because of this issue. I tell you what, Micah, even though this guy claims to be a believer, if he was a non-believer, I'm telling you that we are at a point right now in our culture where, because this kind of technology and these ideas have become almost ubiquitous out there, because of everything from movies and Netflix shows and stuff like that, this is on people's minds. And what I'm saying is that we have a perfect segue to talk to people about the gospel by using AI and technology and transhumanism as a perfect springboard, and not being afraid of this one subject, Micah, this one subject, and that is eschatology. You saw how this young guy quickly resonated with the idea of an antichrist, and he had no problem talking about this. I'm telling you that we have neglected the eschatological angle to our own detriment, in a sense that we just have not used it to emphasize to people the idea that what's going to happen to this world. And so teleology, where is it all going? What's the purpose? What's the goal? How will it all end? And it's amazing to me that this guy thinks we can just regulate our way out of all of this. That is something that also needs to be addressed in terms of how do people think we're going to handle all this? I tell you what, I think for most people, even Christians, I think they think we will just regulate this. We'll just legislate it. But here's the problem, Micah. As you read the literature, that's part of the problem. As you read the literature, it's actually the coming legislation on all of these issues that might terrify us more than anything else. So it's a catch-22, brother. Yes, we want to avoid Skynet, right? But when you put this kind of legislation into the hand of legislators in this world, watch out.
Well, I mean, I'm kind of just thinking about the last, 3 years that we've kind of lived through, where it's the appeal to the expert on every single thing. Is the expert, the legislator is the expert, the regulator is the expert, the scientist is the expert, the doctors and all that. And this just appeal to authority does nothing but really just confuse the issue, because now it's kind of like even just hearing you talk. I'm listening to you and you're kind of the expert on this, and I'm not. I'm just listening along, nodding my head and shouting out an amen every once in a while. But it's kind of one of those things of every single one of us, every single Christian specifically, needs to be involved in these conversations, tying it to eschatology and what this means for everything in the future and today, of what it's going to look like for the church, ourselves, and for you and I, for our children.
Excellent. I think that's extremely valid. Now, if you look at the verse that's up there, Revelation 13:15, I'm so glad that Ray ended this documentary with scripture references. I thought that was extremely well done. And I think it's very powerful, and it drives home some very important thoughts. One of them, of course, is eschatology, because here he is quoting Revelation 13:15 that says, "And it was given to him to give breath to the image of the beast, so that the image of the beast would even speak and cause as many as do not worship the image of the beast to be killed. And he causes all, with the small and the great, the rich and the poor, the free and the slaves, to be giving a mark on their right hand or on their forehead." And then he goes on to explain the mark of the beast. And I got to tell you what, man, Jesus, when he came, one of the indictment of the Pharisees was, you can tell the signs of the weather. Look, there's a storm coming.
Yeah.
But you won't discern the sign of the times. In other words, at some fundamental point, the sign of the times becomes so apparent that it's almost negligent not to make certain obvious connections. Now, my friends out there, eschatology is a hot button issue, very controversial, emotionally charged issue. If you're postmillennial, if you're postmillennial today, not in the past, but if you're postmillennial today, all this talk of Antichrist, Babylon, Antichrist system, mark of the beast means nothing to you, because you believe in preterism, at least partial preterism, although some recently have taken the dive into full preterism to their own heretical damnation. But for some people, they believe all that talk about Antichrist. Ray Comfort is off his rocker. This is Ray Comfort. He must be premillennial, dispensational, whatever. That Antichrist jargon has nothing to do with us now. So postmillennial people will disregard this entire aspect of it. If you're premillennial and pre-tribulational, you might end up in a similar place. If you believe in a rapture, let's say, before the return of Jesus and before the tribulation, you might end up in the same place, in the sense that it doesn't really matter because God's going to take us out of here anyway. Before it gets really bad, we're going to be raptured. And so we don't really have to worry about all of that. And, I possibly, my eschatology, of course, would suggest both are wrong. And that I do believe Antichrist, tribulation, mark of the beast, Babylon, beast system, all of these things are in the future, not just of people left behind after a rapture, but for all the saints. I mean, the saints are mentioned in Revelation over and over and over and over. And therefore, I think it's important for us to get a grip eschatologically and to understand how easy it could be now to fulfill a lot of these prophecies that I would say up to this point in church history really gave people a lot of consternation and confusion, just not knowing what to do with some of these texts. The people need to understand, and let me say something, Micah, we'll go a little bit long today, if you're okay with that. We'll go a little long here just to say, maybe another pot of coffee. You need another pot of coffee? Is that what that is?
Probably another pot.
But let me, not too much longer, but let me just say this, that I've been talking about this here recently because, I'm obviously passionate about my eschatology, and I know that a lot of people are too, but there needs to be some eschatological realism at this point to understand that up to about the middle of the 19th century, so 1800s or so, right? Even in the Reformed tradition, guys, this is where we need to be honest with ourselves. There was incredible confusion on eschatology. If you read into the Reformers, if you read into the Puritans, you read even Calvin, Luther, the Puritans, John Owen, Thomas Watson, you read into some of the literature of these men, some of the interpretations highly allegorical. Some of the interpretations were were hyper eschatological, thinking that the Pope was the Antichrist, for example, which of course we know he was not. And certain Reformed Baptist, Reformed Presbyterian, they'll try to modify that and say, well, maybe the Antichrist or the false prophet will be the Pope, but it will be sort of the modified version of that would be sort of the seat of Rome is Antichrist. Okay, whatever. It's not a one-to-one fulfillment, therefore, but it just reveals that for a long time there was mass confusion on a lot of eschatological issues. And just, I would argue, as of recently, let's say in the middle of the 19th century, particularly culminating in Voss, Bavinck, and others, we gained much more eschatological clarity, even among dispensational premillennial interpreters. We just became way more rigorous about eschatological texts. So I think that's just really important for us to point out, is that we have progressed, in my opinion. We have developed, progressed, and I think we have refined our eschatology tremendously. A commentary, my favorite commentary on the book of Revelation, for example, G.K. Beale. There was nothing like G.K. Beale back in the 1700s. Nothing. There was nothing like it. You couldn't find something like that anywhere in the world. It just didn't exist. Right. And so we have made certain gains. So that's all I want to point out, to say I think we have a much better understanding. But man, I tell you what, when you look at a video like this, when you look into the future of technology, it just does not become difficult to begin to connect certain dots, eschatological dots, regarding issues like Antichrist, a speaking image, a global economic system, global monetary system, a way to track and trace every financial transaction in the known modern world. Those things are not difficult to imagine at this point. So let's show the next couple of scriptures that Ray ends the video with, because I think they're also important, but maybe we can just keep the audio low, but at least show the verses, because they're really good verses. Yeah. Yeah, the sense of urgency. And then he ends it, I think, with Colossians chapter 2, and it's the one I wanted to get to, but bring every thought into the obedience of Christ. That's a good verse. Don't be conformed to the thinking of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Romans chapter 12, absolutely critical. Now stop here, because this verse right here is absolutely important for us. As we respond to transhumanism, it's just going to be absolutely indispensable for us to understand worldly thinking, worldly ways of thinking, versus a truly biblical and a truly biblical philosophy when it comes to issues like this. Paul says, see to it that no one takes you captive through hollow or deceptive philosophy. I'm just reading that, I think it's the King James translation, but he says here, which depend on human tradition. And then he uses this interesting word. In the English, it's a phrase. In the Greek text, it's one word. Here it is, the elemental spiritual forces of the world. Wow. The Greek word for elemental spiritual forces of the world, the Greek word is only one. It's stoicheon. And stoicheon is an interesting word. I've covered this word numerous times, but that word just means something like the elemental things, the elemental principles of the world. And as I've looked at all the commentaries and whatnot, I think the best interpretation of that word is referring to man-made religion, man-made philosophy, man-made spirituality, man-made ethics, morality, all of that. And that we are to reject all of that, which ends up being something like a humanistic paganism. And instead, we are to think according to Christ. And that is going to become remarkably challenging in the days and years ahead, as the issue of transhumanism and AI will radically complicate, and for many people, radically confuse people as to the nature of the Christian worldview on fundamental issues like sex, identity, spirituality, truth and knowledge, meaning, morals, beauty, you name it. It will radically, radically complicate our ability to discern where to draw the line on certain ethical issues like implantable technology, which by 2030 will explode on the scene. And that's why it's going to be really, really important for us to continue to develop our theology in light of what's coming with transhumanism. So we went, a few minutes over. I mean, I don't know. Last time I checked, nobody is holding us accountable to any timeline here, but we try to keep it around an hour, even for our own sanity, right, Micah?
Yeah, but I want to ask you one more question before we leave.
Yeah, please.
And it's kind of like we've kind of talked a little bit about this, but where do pastors start? Where do the average Christian who should be studying just as though they were a seminary student, where do we start in this, and how do we think through these things? What's a good methodology that you can give me in like 60 seconds?
Sure. Read a couple books to get yourself educated on transhumanism. Jacob Schatzer, Transhumanism and the Image of God. Start there. And then if you want to do a little bit more research from a slightly different angle, pick up Transhumanism and Transcendence by Ronald Cole Turner. However, be advised that the authors that contribute to that book are more liberal. Mm-hmm. But the information in that book, I would say, is really, really good. Because they're going to help you understand pathways to post-human thinking without arriving at Terminator and Skynet. Okay?
Yeah, gotcha.
But just ways of thinking and a kind of culture that's being created that is lending to a post-human idea. And then from the Christian perspective, I would just say, get serious about theology. The answers, we already have them. They're already there. Just read the Westminster Confession, read the London Baptist Confession or something like that, and get a true understanding of who and what man is, who and what God is. understanding those kinds of things. And then, honestly, Micah, I'm going to recommend to people this theological resource right here. And one of the reasons why is because I think Bavinck has become remarkably relevant. This book right here, which I don't know if I've given you this, Micah, or if you have this.
No, I don't. You haven't given it to me either.
So this is a book called The Wonderful Works of God. It used to be, I think, Our Reasonable Faith by Herman Bavinck. But I would buy that book for as many people as you can in your church, precisely because of the fact that Herman Bavinck saw a deficiency even in his time. He saw a deficiency in theology and the way that the church in the Reformed tradition was interacting with the rising generations, the youth. And he saw that we were kind of getting a bit archaic in a bad sense, not like like we say, right? Old is gold, and if it's new, it's not true, or whatever.
Yeah.
What Bavinck is saying is, if all we're doing is catechizing our people with the old way of saying and doing everything, and we do not speak the language of the rising generation and interact with what the young people are encountering at the university and in the culture, literally, that's what he's talking about. What he's saying is that we're going to be ill-equipped to deal with that. But what you're going to get from Bavinck in a chapter like chapter 1, man's highest good, when you get into man's highest good, when you get Bavinck talking about, he has a chapter in here on the essence of man, the origin, essence, and purpose of man. Oh, man. I tell you what, just get that chapter 12 of The Wonderful Works of God. Get that book, right? Get that book and get that chapter. Sorry, it's a white cover, so you can see the title. But chapter 12 here, Micah, it is so healthy for constructing not just a healthy view of man biblically, theologically, in the Reformed tradition, but also Bavinck, I call him the prophetic reformer, because he is a Reformed theologian that seeks to speak to our times and seeks to speak to where we're going, and actually interacts with technology and the Industrial Revolution and the modernity and where man is going through his machinery. He actually interacts with those ideas, and it's remarkably refreshing that such a titanic theologian, and yet, in my opinion, he doesn't commit the errors of, let's say, maybe some of what Kuyper did with an overheated culturalism, with an overheated sphere sovereignty theology that can lend to kind of Christian Reconstructionist, theonomic, postmillennial ideas, even though Kuyper himself, I don't think, was a postmillennial theonomist. But you know what I mean? He doesn't kind of go in that direction, but he still gives you this robust pilgrim theology, a pilgrim worldview with a radical prophetic eye to what is happening in the culture. And so that's my advice. I hope that benefits someone. I hope that'll be useful.
Yeah, your 60 seconds was about 3.5, 4 minutes. But so I got one more question for you, and try to be as brief as you can. So 4 minutes, I guess. So the question is, where do you think that we are?
I don't mean to do that.
You're a pastor. It's just what happens. Where do you think that we are? Do you think that we are? I don't think that we're early, but if you tell me we're early in this, great. Do you think that we're right on the cusp of getting us informed, or do you think that we're already too late? The train's already left the station, and now we as Christians aren't going to be able to really influence this the way to kind of pull the reins and maintain some control.
Complicated question, because in some way I would have to say that we are. I don't want to say I don't want to use the language of too late, but I do want to use the language of catching up, because in some sense we will, no question about it, we will have to play catch up. And the learning curve, the education curve for the Christian church at large, the discipleship, the enterprise of discipling the church on these issues is so massive, and the amount of energy that will have to go into this is going to be substantial. And the fact that right now, I mean, I'm sorry, but as I attend some of these big conferences, Micah, I am still not seeing anything on the radar. I don't see anything going on. And I think it is high time. It is beyond high time that instead of, oh yeah, somebody was talking about transhumanism in a breakout session in the back in room 103. I don't know about that, brother.
Yeah.
I don't think that's going to cut it. And we will have to absolutely contend with this. And I'm talking to multiple Christian leaders right now that are awakened to it. They see it. They're grasping it. Now they're starting to read articles. I have yet to meet another Christian leader that I know who is actually interacting with original source material like I am. If you're out there, call me.
Connect.
Call Micah. Don't bother me. Call Micah. Reach out to Micah. Message Micah.
There you go.
Message Micah.
There's my Twitter handle.
There you go. Hit up Micah, because unless, like I did, I got a library card. I went out and got the cutting edge transhumanist literature from the primary guys. I'm reading all the primary guys that I can. I mean, I just read a article by Vernon Vinge on the, well, he's the guy that actually coined the phrase the singularity. And it has been popularized by Ray Kurzweil. But to read these primary sources requires remarkable amounts of discipline. Not everyone's called to that.
Right.
Just want to make that, you know what I mean? Not everyone's called to that. But all I'm saying is that, like anything, if you are going to refute Islam, Mormonism, Jehovah's Witness stuff, Scientology, whatever, you're going to have to go read L. Ron Hubbard. You're going to have to go read the Quran. You're going to have to go read the Book of Mormon and the Pearl of Great Price and all of that. And in similar fashion, you're going to have to go get the Transhumanist Reader by Max Moore. You have to. There's no way around that. So if you're interested in doing, I'll leave us with this. A guy that leads a major international ministry that I know, that does a bunch of stuff worldwide. A lot of guys that he knows, leaders around the global church, are switching their focus to what? Transhumanism. And they are directing their energy towards how are we going to deal with the explosion of AI and transhumanism and all of that, and what does that mean at the global economic, socioeconomic level, and ultimately implicating what does that mean for the worldview, spiritual level. So we're early. I don't want to use the word it's too late, as in forget it, it's over, it's we're too late to the party, but we are going to have to play catch up on a lot of stuff. But there is time right now in the next couple, 2, 3, 4, 5 years where we have to work like crazy to get ourselves
catch up. I love it.
To get ourselves equipped.
Yeah.
Period. So
I love it.
Right on, man. Good question.
Well, great. Well, this has been great. I mean, 2 questions. I asked you for 60 seconds. You gave me 4.5 minutes. It's good night.
It's great. It's beautiful. That's a beautiful, great work. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us again. Look forward to our next time together. God bless.
God bless, guys.